This is Mary Magnuson, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on broadband at the county level. This is one in a series of webinars Blandin Foundation offers for our Blandin broadband communities and open to anyone with an interest in using technology to improve community. Especially today, we don't have a webinar topic for April 13th, so if there's anything any of you would like to hear about, please let me know or let Bill know. Appreciate it. We're taking suggestions. And also, before we begin, I'd like to point to this chat box in the bottom left of your screen. To interact with us at any time during today's webinar, you can simply type your question or comment in the chat box. Now let's get started. Again, my name is Mary Magnuson, and I work here at the Blandin Foundation, and I administer the Blandin Community Broadband Program. Joining me today is Bill Coleman of Community Technology Advisors, who I'm sure many of you know. Bill has been Blandin Foundation's primary broadband program consultant for a number of years. Bill is going to introduce our speakers today, and they are Vince Robinson from DSI, Rick West from Otter Tail County, Mark Johnson from ECMEC, Donna Martin and Larry Lindor, I believe, from Pope County, and Whitney Ridland from IRRB. Take it away, Bill.
Thank you very much, Mary. My own work and the work of the Blandin Foundation, working on rural broadband, started off working at the city level primarily. Cities want to know, how do we get better broadband service within our city's geographic boundaries to serve the residents, the downtown area, the industrial parks. And in some places that work still continues as the dynamic broadband technologies change and more fiber and high-power wireless is required. But we've also seen a real change in the organizational unit where the broadband planning is really happening. More and more that's happening at the county level, and we see that communities recognize, rural communities recognize that urban-rural interdependence between the county seat, the smaller communities outlying, and the surrounding countryside. And so we've seen these county initiatives really take off. Of course, the challenge they have is low population densities and large areas of unserved population. So today's webinar is going to be about the county initiatives, and we have 5 great examples of counties that have been working on this either for some time or just getting into it. And so we'll talk about that in detail as we go along. We're going to have people introduce themselves, and our first speaker to introduce himself is Vince Robinson from Lincoln County. Vince?
Thank you, Bill. Again, my name is Vince Robinson. I have a consulting firm called Development Services in Ivanhoe, Minnesota, which is located in Lincoln County. We do quite a bit of work in community and economic development and do a lot of work with a group called Lincoln County Enterprise Development Corporation, which is how I got introduced into working on the broadband initiative here in Lincoln County. So Lincoln County is a relatively small county, both in terms of population and geography. We have about 6,500 people in the county. Currently, as far as broadband is concerned, we have about 50%, a little bit more of our county that we're told meets the 25 by 30 speed, but I think those providers may be stretching that just a little bit when visiting with our consumers here. We have another, obviously, big chunk of our county that's well underserved and in many cases unserved. So it's very important for us to look at the half of our county to the east that's not covered. We have a cooperative called Interstate Telecommunications Cooperative that has applied for RUS funding to bring fiber to the premise in all of our premises in the western half of the county, but the eastern half of the county is primarily served by Frontier, which hasn't been nearly as aggressive in wanting to bring fiber to those premises. So that's kind of our initiative. Currently, we're working with 5 and potentially 6 other counties in a multi-county feasibility study. We have an engineering firm identified that we want to engage to do that study. Those other counties would be Lyon, Pipestone, Murray, Yellow Medicine, Chippewa, and potentially Redwood County coming in on that as well. So we're in the stages right now. We've gotten confirmation of match funding from all of the county governments involved, and we're anticipating submitting an application to the Blandin Robust Feasibility Study program.
Good. Thank you, Ben. That's 6-county approach. That's one more new level of geography up, obviously, from the county level to see this multi-county collaboration. Rick is with us from Otter Tail County. Rick, tell us what's going on there.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Rick West. I serve as the Public Works Director and County Engineer for Otter Tail County. I'm actually filling in today for Nick Leonard, who is our county lead on Broadband. He's our Tourism and Economic Development Director, but has taken a week of well-earned vacation. A little bit about Otter Tail County. We're a large rural county, 62 townships, 23 cities, largest city being Fergus Falls, population about 15,000 for that city. County population year-round is about 58,000. And our primary industries are, of course, agriculture and tourism. We have 1,048 lakes in our county, and our summer population is estimated to be around somewhere between 120 to 130,000 with seasonal cabin folks. We are, in looking at the slides that are on your screens, a good part of our county is, underserved to various degrees. We have an interest, a strong interest in developing a successful broadband project in our county, and really are in the very beginning stages of that. We were fortunate and grateful to receive a grant from the Blandin Foundation to conduct a feasibility study, and that just occurred recently, so we're beginning to formulate that process. And I think I would close with that, Bill, for my comments.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. Mark Johnson from Kanabec County.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Johnson. I am the Executive Director of East Central Minnesota Educational Cable Cooperative, we call it ECMEC, which is a group of 14 school districts. Are in Mille Lacs, Kanabec, Pine, Chisago, Isanti, a little bit of Sherburne County. But I am also co-chair of the Kanabec Broadband Initiative and working in Kanabec County specifically. And KBI started in 2011, so we're probably some of the old folks around in terms of having been working on this for that long. And you can see we're pretty pink on the map, as many of the people you've seen today are. I think in the latest profiles, we rank 84th out of 87 counties at the 25-3 state goal, and we rank 68 out of 87 in the 120 goal. And where you see it says 27 or 26% have access to that higher goal speed, that directly correlates to the people who live in the towns or cities in Kanabec County, which are few and far between. Mora and Ogilvie essentially are the two cities. And if you live in those two cities, you have options, and you can get service at now as high as 200 meg down speed. And by the end of this year, we should have gig speed capability. The problem is the other 75% of people who don't live in those towns in the county have access to almost nothing, and you've heard those stories before. We have worked tirelessly, I would say, with local providers, some of them that you see on the screen here, as well as some other providers as someone who might come in as a competitor to the county. And we get a lot of roadblocks. We get the things that you've heard from people. We can't make a market case for it. The existing infrastructure won't support it, so we can't do improvements there. It's not in our mission. And in fact, from a large carrier, that we can't disclose anything financial to a public entity, even though we've been trying very hard to do a public-private partnership. We have convinced our county board, and that took a couple of years, to convince them that maybe they should have a stake in this, and at least do a bonding project to offer as a long-term, low-interest loan to a potential provider. And we found out from existing providers that, according to them, that's not enough. Even with that teamed up with a potential deed border-to-border grant, that it may still not be enough. So where we're at in the county right now is we are just about entirely served by CenturyLink as our incumbent carrier. You can see Benton Co-op and Frontier have very tiny corners, one in the southwest, one in the northwest of the county, but the primary area is served by CenturyLink. And they worked last summer and into as long as they could dig, and they're still working on some of their point of presences and so on to provide or to upgrade their service through the CAF program, so the Connect America Fund Phase 2 program. And we were lucky, I would say, in a sense that they are building our area first in that program. And I will tell more about this later, but that's our good news. There's a couple of frustrating things that go along with that I'm sure some of you can anticipate, and I will talk more about that later. But that's, I guess, kind of where we are right now.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And then we have Donna Martin and Larry Lindor from Polk County.
Good afternoon, Bill. This is Donna Martin, and I am the IT director for Pope County, and I have Larry Linder here with me. He is actually a Pope County commissioner. Back in July, we actually formed a committee for broadband to start looking into this because we'd had so many complaints from citizens of the county, and our committee actually is comprised of me and 2 commissioners, so it's moving quite quickly, and it's very nice because they actually are very, very involved and very committed to getting the broadband to border for our county. Like I said, we started back in July, and then we started to look at different providers that we have, and we've interviewed 5 out of 10 of those providers, and we've even interviewed one electrical company that came and asked if they could please participate, and they were looking at more in a funding part, not actually the project, but to help fund the project. So we started with that, and then we actually mailed out surveys, and we got like a 24% response from all the total county survey, and it's just some of the surveys are amazing how people on the borders and towards the east side of the county have absolutely nothing. Our county, is population roughly 11,000, and we have, I believe it's 62% is underserved and 38% is unserved. So there are quite a few people that would like to move to Pope County, but actually don't come here because they are not able to get internet in the areas that they want to build. So we started with that, and then we applied for the Blandin Foundation grant, where we received $25,000, which was great, and the board matched the others. So we've actually hired an engineering firm, and they are starting on our feasibility study right now. And that's kind of where we're at this point. did you want to say anything, Mr. Linder?
Well, it's just the west side of the county is being served by our cooperatives, and it's unfortunate that Florida County isn't served by the cooperatives because they had the foresight to put in fiber when they were upgrading their lines a long time ago, so that the west side is very well served, and so that's my district, and I don't get as many calls from there as I do from the other districts. So.
And what the engineers are looking at, they're going to bring back 3 different designs for us, and the board has already talked about bonding for the provider will actually apply for the deed grant, and then the board has approved for bonding for some of it if that's where the partnership leads us. But we have two or three companies right now that absolutely are really wanting to move forward with a partnership. So we've considered ourselves pretty lucky that way.
And our main goal when we talk to these providers is to get fiber to the home, not fiber to the node or fiber to some other spot. We want fiber to the home.
Mm-hmm. So that's
good.
about where we are.
Okay, thank you. And Whitney Ridlon actually works with the IRRB, of which St. Louis County takes up a lot of that territory, and Whitney's the lead person for IRRB on broadband. Welcome, Whitney.
Thanks, Bill. So, like Bill said, I do community development for the IRRB, and a lot of my work focuses on the rural broadband issues in northeastern Minnesota. This includes St. Louis County. You know, St. Louis County is huge. It's got the Duluth area, the Iron Range, and the resort areas up on Lake Vermilion and in the Ely area. And we have a lot of broadband activity around us with Paul Bunyan expansions in Itasca County, the Lake Connections project in Lake County. But in actual St. Louis County, you know, our main communities are primarily served. But once you get outside of them, even 10 minutes out of downtown Hibbing, 5 minutes out of downtown Hibbing, and you don't have any kind of internet connection. So, you know, knowing it's a huge county, where do we focus our investment if we were to put any investment into broadband infrastructure? And with that question in mind, we thought, well, let's let the communities kind of take a look at this. So a partnership formed between IRRB, St. Louis County, and the Blandin Foundation to do 5 Iron Range broadband communities across the Iron Range. So these communities are generally made up of school district boundaries, so they're going out into the rural areas, and they're looking at the broadband in their communities and trying to come up with community-rooted solutions. You know, in turn, we hope that this helps us understand where to target investments in such a large community with so much red area on the map.
Good. Thanks so much, Whitney.
Thanks.
And I've been lucky enough to do a lot of work with those St. Louis County communities, and very intense desire for better broadband throughout the county. Vince, tell us about the levels of community and political support for a broadband project in your county. Has broadband become a more important issue in the last year or so, and if so, why do you think so? Vince?
Sure. So I think part of the reason that this has come to the forefront is we've got some communities that have had businesses and things that have started to really bring this to our county commissioners' attention and saying, you know, there's certain areas of our county that are doing okay with broadband, but I have a business here and I can't do the things that I want to do. And we've had farmers going to our county commissioners as well, indicating that they can't download or upload the information that they want on a daily basis. And one of the greatest cries has come from our schools and parents whose children can't download their homework or can't complete their homework in a timely fashion, end up having to drive into town with their children to get those homework assignments and things done. Combined, these comments have really pushed our county commissioners to be more aware of the issue. In addition, with them seeing what some of the other counties around the state have been doing, and going to regional meetings and things where some of these other counties are talking about these initiatives, I think it's really brought home to them the importance of trying to, stay competitive in our state and certainly with neighboring states in terms of just being able to keep residents, keep employees, and drive our local economy. So we've also seen our city councils take a more active role in this. Our economic development authorities have all kind of brought this to the forefront. They've been visiting with our healthcare partners and educational partners, and I think all in all, everybody's just raising their voice saying, we can't afford to get any further behind than we are. We need to act now. And that's really resonated with the county commissioners. And I think it's resonated with the commissioners in the other 5 counties that we're working with in this collaborative effort as well. I'm hearing the same things from their representatives about how this is really becoming much greater of an issue at the local and county level.
Okay. Thanks, Vincent. Can you tell us the time frame for when you guys are going to do the multi-county study?
Well, we hope to be able to apply to the Blandin program in this next cycle. We'd like to complete this feasibility study over the course of this summer and hopefully be in line to apply for the border-to-border grant program this fall if we can get all the pieces of the puzzle put together. We do have a couple of providers that have expressed some interest, but we obviously have a big geographic area that's covered by a multitude of providers, so we may not end up as one collaborative initiative for implementation, but that's what the feasibility study will help us figure out.
Okay, thank you. Donna, same question about the political support for broadband in Polk County.
Well, Mr. Linder, I know he could answer like his district and how people have complained to him, and Mr. Jurdy is also our other commissioner. And I'm very lucky because I have 2 commissioners on the committee, so it really cuts through a lot of red tape, and they're very committed to make this work. We looked at it that we may have to do it in not one whole total project, but maybe break it down into 2 projects. And so we're trying to look at the best value for us. And we, like I said, they do also have already decided that they would bond for funding in like a low interest loan to the telco or the provider, and that seems to have had a good response. But we've had people, actually providers, come to us. We didn't even have to contact them. They've seen that we're starting this, and they've contacted and want to come aboard right away.
And we've also had emails and voice messages from citizens throughout the county telling us, can you hurry up and do it and get it done so we can have it as soon as possible? And we tell them it takes time, but that's been nothing but encouragement. Nobody has said, what are you wasting your money for? Why are you guys trying to do this? It's been total encouragement the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly makes it easier to be a county commissioner.
It sure does.
There's also another bill that just came into light where we talk about education, and I think that's what we're really pushing in Pope, because, like you say, Vince had mentioned, where people have to drive their kids to school 1 or 2 hours early to do their homework or after school. And now there is a bill that's actually going through legislation about snow days, that they're going to take away snow days and kids can do e-learning. Well, you can't very well do that if you don't have broadband service. So, I mean, the education part is a huge push for us also.
Good, thank you. Rick, tell us about Otter Tail.
Well, from Otter Tail's perspective, I would say in the last 2 years it's become a very hot topic. Our county board is in full support of our need to act upon this and move as quickly as we can. We're hearing, as Vince and Donna mentioned, we're hearing from our ag community. Farming today is a very high-tech operation for the most part. Some of our ag processing facilities, and actually folks that are interested in moving to Otter Tail County, and they look at, we're one of those counties that we're either not served or underserved in a large percentage of our land area. It's, that makes their decisions nowadays. They have a need for high-speed internet connections, and we're not at the top of the list in that category. So from a competitive standpoint, we as a county and our county board is unanimous in this. This is an important issue. We last April, early April, we held a broadband stakeholders meeting and really invited the providers at that time, broadband providers, to meet with our county board and other county officials to more of a education type session to hear where they were at. We found out, as someone mentioned earlier, some of the providers are fairly open with their information and what their plans are, where others keep their plans fairly close to the vest, I guess is a way to say it. But it was a good meeting. We talked about what we called the gold standard, which the question put on the table is what should our future broadband system look like, or what should it be? That generated a lot of discussion, and then talked about developing a countywide strategy. We went on from that point, continuing discussions, to actually talk to a planning consultant where we're trying to put our arms around public outreach education for our citizens when we talk about a countywide effort. Then really moved into discussion of looking to the Blandin Foundation for some help financially with a planning grant. So it's a very important topic, and it's a topic, as we talk more and more about it to our citizens, is well supported. They see the need. One of our commissioners actually, you all probably heard this before, but it's much like the rural electrification program in the 1930s, where this is becoming an essential service to how the world works today. So it is important, and we see the need, certainly.
Good. Rick, I'm going to maybe catch you off guard here, but we have a question from one of the audience about the idea of when counties putting fiber in when they do road projects. And I know you're head of public works, so what do you think about the talk about Dig One kind of projects?
Built full support. We have a few of our utilities that we've done a little bit of that here. I believe we need to do more. The road is being reconstructed. There's no better time to do it, and so I think that concept is gaining popularity with the utilities, and we should be encouraging it whenever we can, certainly.
Okay. And then there's a follow-up question on your gold standard comment. Did you guys come to an agreement about what that is?
Well, we're, and of course Nick's more up to speed on this than I am, but it seems to me that when we talk about the minimum performance requirements, there's like a 2-year difference in timelines. Is it 22 and 26, 2022?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Why would we even consider the 2022 standard? I mean, when we begin discussing this, as far as speed up and down.
Yeah. And
that's where our board's at. They're saying, why would we even go to the 2022 standard when we know what 2026 looks like as far as minimum
Yeah, and certainly at this point with technology, to reach that 100 down and 20 up, you need a new fiber-based solution to reach that as opposed to a copper.
Yes, and correct. And I guess, we were thinking without some restraints, just saying what would be our gold standards, and it's early on in the development stage, Bill, but that was the discussions a year ago about those two different standards and the short period of time between the two. So, up for discussion yet, certainly, but we wanted to have that discussion with the vendors and actually learned quite a bit from them.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mark Johnson, what's the impact of the CAF2 funding on your countywide broadband discussions? Has your incumbent provider shared their CAF2 deployment plans with you? Is there any momentum to try and add DEED border-to-border grant dollars to the incumbent CAF2 investment to reach more people at higher speeds?
Sure. There's lots I can say about this, but I'll try to be as brief as I can. In terms of impact, right now, CAF2 is the solution in Kanabec County. It's what we have been able to attain in the work that we've done. Our incumbent provider is CenturyLink, and we have continued to work with them, continued to talk with them over the last several years. And I guess squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes. We may have been a squeaky wheel enough to get them to build our area first under the new, under the CAF2 or the Phase 2 program. So they have been digging all, as I alluded to earlier, they've been digging all past summer and right into the fall, and now I can still see them doing work on their pedestals and equipment around various areas of the county. So impact-wise, it's important because I have lots of people in the rural areas who are excited about the service that they will get. Now, the opposite side of that, of course, is we know it doesn't meet the new, as you talk about the 2022 goals. It doesn't meet those goals, but they did continue to talk with us, and they did share with us that they were going to do a build. They wouldn't tell us a lot of technical details about it, but they're there, they're digging, and that service is going to start coming online, I believe, within the next couple of months. So that's been important to us. We have worked with them to try to get them to do a border-to-border project to extend service further, from the node, essentially, because they're essentially doing a fiber to the node solution with DSL loops beyond that. And they've been reluctant to do that, citing, in their words, that the additional funding from the state still doesn't make it feasible for them. I have a feeling that their return on investment is so short that it's perhaps difficult for them to make a business case for it. At least that's what we're hearing. But we continue to work with them on identifying some potential places for that to happen once they get the CAF2 build done. So that's kind of, I guess, where we are with them right now. I would encourage anybody who has one of the incumbents like CenturyLink, Frontier, Windstream in your areas. I would encourage you to keep talking with them and look for opportunities to use that funding that they're doing as a match toward I definitely encourage you to keep having those conversations.
Good, thank you, Mark. Donna, tell us about CAF2. Now, you have some smaller telephone companies in Polk County that qualify for the Alternative Connect America Fund program, also known
Correct.
as ACAM. Tell us about that discussion.
Sure. Our ACAM discussions that we have had are with two major companies. We have one that has quite a large area, Starbuck area and down, and we have spoken with them about if they do the fiber to the node, how can we help them to continue from the node to the home to get funding for that. And then the other one that is ACAM really hasn't shown much interest in Polk County. But we are working very diligently to get that so that we don't want to have to redo it again in 5 years. We want to try and get it to the best that we can with the funding we have. And we did also speak to, or get an email now from CenturyLink, and they want to meet with us next week in regarding to the CAF2 funding. Our only concern is just like yours, is that their speeds are maybe 10-1, and we'd like to really encourage them to get to better speeds than that, but we're kind of avoiding their area until the very last of our project, right, in case that becomes an issue. But we will still continue to talk with them.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
And thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Whitney, with St. Louis County now and IRRB collaborating with Blandin, I know that people up in the Cook and Orr Boys Ford Exchange have heard that now CenturyLink will be building this year with CAF2 funds. In addition to that project, have you heard of other ones in St. Louis County as a result, like CAF2 dollars?
Not that I'm 100% sure about, but I do know that, you know, they are spending CAF2 dollars in areas like Vulcan Township, and I would hope as these communities move through the Blandin broadband process that they build their relationships with the incumbent providers, so they have more of a relationship, so they know where the investments that the providers are making are occurring.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. And then I'm going to ask you to continue on and talk about the approach. What's your approach to identify and solidify partnerships with providers, either the incumbent or a possible competitor? What's the most frustrating aspect of trying to create a public-private partnership?
Well, when I first moved back up to the range, they said I'd be working on broadband after being in the metro for 10 years. I was like, what? But so really how I started out in my position here was really identifying who those existing providers are for residential and commercial, identifying who the potential providers are for residential, commercial, and then getting to know who that ground worker bee was for each of those different providers. So often at just a simple phone call that, you know, business X on Highway 10 needs better service, and kind of putting the options out on the table to that business, and also connecting with the providers kind of really helped to build a relationship with, you know, the CenturyLink or the Frontier, Mediacom, Paul Bunyan kind of thing. Another thing was that I always use all the time is keep that relationship positive, and keep them going. Check in even if you haven't heard from them recently. And then bring facts and use them. You know, the survey work and the mapping work really kind of gets their attention. So I guess those were kind of the two things I had done before this Blandin broadband partnership. But now I'm kind of seeing that now the communities themselves are building relationships with these providers by inviting them to these community meetings. And, you know, it's positive when they show up and we see things happening, like with CenturyLink up in Orr. But then it can be frustrating when they don't show up. You know, CenturyLink didn't show up to the Chisholm meeting, you know, and we know things are happening, but what is happening? So, I mean, I've had some positive experiences and then also some frustrating experiences. So.
Okay, thank you. Mark, tell us more about Kinavic's partnership attempts.
Sure. You know, and I'll take it back to, you know, the first question about political support and has broadband become important. When we started in 2011, lots of people said, why would I care about this? What do I, you know, even our county board was that way. So we, you know, in terms of forming a partnership, we had to work on our county board as well as our providers. But we did work with the county board. We did get them to understand the issue. And we got them to step up to the table and become involved, to the point of even just in the last year, Kanabec County started its first countywide EDA board. Never had one before. And now in the last year that's formed, and broadband has become essentially one of their top priorities, for all of the reasons that you heard people talk about before. And so then it was KBI working with the providers. And you know, kind of along the lines of what Whitney said, is the importance of inviting them to be part of the conversation. And so we continually brought them to the table. We continually invited them to meetings, and continually had those conversations with them, even when we were hearing some things we didn't want to hear. And there were plenty of those frustrations that happened. So for us, it's been about trying to make everybody a part of the conversation. We haven't been overly successful, other than the point that I made earlier, where I think in keeping CenturyLink as part of the conversation, that helped us get to the front of the line for the CAF build. And if that's, you know, obviously that's going to be improved service to some degree, right? Limited as we know it is, to some of our, to many of our residents. Roadblocks that we ran into along those lines that people can, you know, kind of look out for. And if anybody can tell me how you got around one of these, I'd be happy to hear about it. Working with the companies like CenturyLink, we had difficulty in talking finances with them because they wanted us to do a non-disclosure agreement. And we were in county board meetings and public meetings, and it was difficult for us to have non-disclosure agreements when we're dealing with public entities. And there may be ways to get around that. We don't have a telecom or a telecommunications cooperative in our area. To us, that we look at that as a negative, because those organizations have been so successful, you know, at deploying broadband in the rural areas. We have a rural electric cooperative, and we worked with them, and it didn't rise to one of their priority levels, and we're still working on that, and we're still working with them. But I guess, as far as what I can say, it's all about keeping those conversations, and Whitney kind of covered that. Keep those conversations open, keep people at the table, even when you're hearing what you don't want to hear, because eventually those opportunities pop up. And for us, it was getting to the front of the line for the CAF build. That's going to help us in the short term, and then we're going to continue to work on solutions past that.
Good, thank you. I give you guys credit for that patient approach. Rick.
Not easy.
Rick, and for some of us, much harder. Rick, how are you in Otter Tail County working with others to spur broadband improvements? The schools, cities, adjacent counties, electric co-ops, or other partners?
We are again in our early stages in our program or our development, but once we were made aware that we were successful with our Blandin grant application, you know, we had our stakeholders meeting April of last year, 2016, and so those folks, mainly providers, we had some schools that attended that. We built some relationships there. We continue with those relationships with those folks. Now that they understand that we are going to proceed to a feasibility study, we've had 2 or 3 of the providers contact either Nick or myself, and they want to be sure that they will be part of our project steering committee for this feasibility study work. So, you know, I think we're moving in a positive direction. We have a number of calls, or have had a number of contacts from businesses that are interested in a higher speed service. So we anticipate that as we move forward, we're going to try and put together this project steering committee for the study. And we want to get a good cross-section of the industries, private citizens, schools, other surrounding counties who may have an interest. That will be our guiding group, our sounding board as we move into the feasibility study stage. We, as was mentioned, I think we understand this is a a long process, and we're a large county. We have a number of providers, and we have one or two co-ops, which I agree are benefits certainly. But we fully understand we need to be positive and forward-looking, and someone said have some patience. So again, early on, but we intend to include as many folks as we can who have an interest in this and desire to serve as we move forward. And that's, I guess, our initial plan of how we encourage collaboration with other partners at this point.
Okay, good. Vince, tell us about what's happening in that front in Lincoln County and your 6-county area.
Well, as you can imagine, we have all kinds of collaborations going on at the local level with the 6 counties in themselves. So, this started with a collaboration between economic development professionals and county administrators in Pipestone, Murray, and Lincoln counties. And I think back to how fast this has all really gone. We really met for the first time together last, I believe, September, and we ended up doing some community meetings in November, and then met with a engineering firm and one of our local providers who actually invited us to come to their office and meet with the engineering firm with them. And they're a small local investor-owned telephone company, and they have fiber to the premise in their entire trade area. But the point is, when we started visiting with the engineering firm, their push to us was get more collaboration from a larger geographic area, and the reason for that was, number one, they felt that they could drive down the cost on a per county basis for the feasibility study, and the survey work that would have to go into that feasibility study. And number two, they felt that when it comes to financing, we would have a better opportunity to market larger scale projects to potential financial institutions. A lot of the large investment firms like to look at projects in the 20 million range and not necessarily in the 5 million range. So they really encouraged us to get other counties involved. At the same time, both the Upper Minnesota Valley Regional Development Commission and the Southwest Regional Development Commission had been working within the counties in their regions to explore broadband, to talk about it, to talk about what it means for workforce development and workforce attraction. So there were already initiatives starting there, and Chippewa and Yellow Medicine County had been working with their Regional Development Commission in that regard. So we stepped into this with many local collaboratives already in place, and we just kind of brought those all together in one room and said, let's make this happen as a group.
Good, thank you. Whitney, same question.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the Iron Range Broadband Communities Program, that's really helping, I see helping some collaboration. They're being led by various entities. Some are being led by the chamber or the school district or the city EDA, but the project teams have involved all of these partners. And, to spur broadband in rural areas, you have to have all these entities involved. It's an all hands on deck approach. I left a couple of these meetings and I saw a chamber lead or a city administrator beaming, smiling, from ear to ear about the positive, about how this collaboration is going to help build their relationships and maybe lead to other sorts of collaboration. So what I really see is, these Blandin broadband communities it's building bridges with technology and broadband in these communities. Entities that weren't talking before are realizing, hey, the business needs better internet, the kids need better internet for school, and they're finding this common ground to work forward together on. another thing that these Iron Range communities are doing is they're going to get some matching money to do feasibility studies. And, you know, Bill, you know this, organically, with a little bit of prodding, these communities have realized, wait a second, maybe we should be looking at more of a regional feasibility study. And I think letting them get there on their own and realizing the benefit that that could have for them in the long term, it is really going to help with broadband on the Iron Range. So hopefully there's more to come.
Good. Good. Thanks, Whitney. Well, the last question we have is, you know, I want to point out that next Wednesday is Broadband Day at the Hill. And we know that in these rural areas, in all these rural counties, that if it's a profitable venture to deploy modern broadband in the community, the private sector providers would have done it already. We know that these areas require at least a 50% grant, and maybe in some cases even more, to make it a good investment for a private sector provider. And so the question is, you know, where do we get those grant dollars? And the state of Minnesota is an obvious example. And so next week, next Wednesday, Day on the Hill, I think our dance card is pretty full. If people are very interested, maybe we could still sneak them in. But otherwise, just think about, you know, calling your legislators maybe next Wednesday and saying, you know, broadband is really important to me. I'm not down there today, but my heart is there. And so the final question is, what advice do you have for state policymakers and others in rural Minnesota as they begin efforts to improve broadband in their area? Vince, why don't you lead off?
Well, thank you. I think from a local level, the initial thing that I would say is get up and scream. Make sure that your voice is heard, and make sure that you have not, you know, just county commissioners and economic development professionals, county administrators, those people talking about this, but you have those families that are being impacted by this from you know, parents and students, or people who are trying to take college classes online, or healthcare professionals who want to see better access for rural health and telemedicine. Those are the people that need to stand up and create a voice. And so getting them to call the local county commissioners and their local legislators is really what's going to make the difference in getting this move forward. From the state perspective, you know, we're kind of at the point, and you already alluded to this, Bill, where kind of the low-hanging fruit is pretty much taken care of already. Now we're after that really good juicy fruit at the top of the tree, right? So how do we create the ladder to get that fruit? And it's going to take a little bit more of a ladder. It's going to take a little bit more than that 50%. When we start to talk about areas even in Lincoln County where you have premises that have, you know, 1-2 miles between them, it's pretty difficult to find an investment strategy that's going to work without substantial investment from the public sector. So I think that's really one of the messages that we have to give is, you know, we need to finish out this state. Our state is only as strong as the weakest link, and we all need to pull each other up. And as a state, that's what we need to do. So that's the message that I plan on taking up there next Wednesday.
Good. Thank you. Rick?
Thank you. I guess I'm going to echo much what Vince stated. We in Otter Tail, we have areas of the county where we do have that very low density farmsteads that are 1, 2, maybe more than that miles separating them. We really see a lot of need for our school system, for homework assignments, students working from home. I think another thing that doesn't get a lot of discussion, and Vince brought it up, was telemedicine and just telemonitoring of individuals. We have a population in Otter Tail County, given our lakes, a lot of folks retire here. They're advancing in years, and of course with that go more health issues. and that's a general statement whether you're on a lake or not. And you need more health care, you need more monitoring. If we have an adequate broadband service in our area, a lot of the technology today that will allow for monitoring, remote monitoring, which is, I think, a rapidly advancing field, certainly. And I would go back to a statement I made earlier. I think, believe this, that this broadband effort has just as much importance as rural electrification did early on in the 1930s when that was all occurring around rural America. This is equally important with how we all do business today, whether you're a farmer, a retired individual, a business, or someone looking to relocate a business to an area. It's like having running water in your house, if you will. So we're going to continue to make that case as best we can, and I agree. They probably know what I'm going to say when I go to the Capitol to visit with our local legislatures. What's really important is a neighbor down the road that needs this service doesn't have it. If that individual, he or she, makes a phone call to one of our local representatives or senators, expressing their need from their level, has a huge impact on how our state legislatures and policymakers will view this need. So I think I'll close with that, Bill. We need to stay at it and make our case as best we can, and sometimes we probably need to get loud.
Thank you, Rick. Mark, do you have any closing comments?
I think you've heard it well said by Vince and by Rick. What I'd add is I'd want to talk to legislators about things like we heard somebody brought up the snow days legislation about eliminating snow days, and what they're doing is making that an option. But they have to know, and I don't know that they always put those things together, that if you're going to have something like that, you're going to have broadband in the rural areas, or they're not going to be able to take advantage of that, even if it's just an option. And if it's a requirement, that's another whole story. So all of those things that you talk about that are vital to rural communities, economic development, medicine, education, quality of life, all of those things, we have to make it known that all those things go together. If you want to do all those things, broadband is one of the pieces that comes with it. So that's one of my message to policymakers. And the last thing I'll leave you with is make sure the public funding goes to the areas of greatest need. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle, and I think there's areas that you've heard about today that are desperately in need, and that's where the money needs to go. So.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Commissioner Lindor, do you have, as an elected official, any advice for the citizenry as they attempt to influence public policy?
Well, when I first got emails and phone calls about it, the first thing I told them, I said, I'm totally in favor of it and going to do everything I can to bring broadband to our areas that need it. But I said, I don't have the purse strings. The purse strings are with the state legislatures, and I would give them either an email their addresses and their phone numbers and their email accounts, and tell them, contact them. They're the ones with the money, and tell them how important it is so that they can reinforce what we're trying to do. We've talked to our legislators several times. The one spot that I'm in as commissioner, he is now the state representative, so we have his ear quite often. But the one thing that I wanted to add too is that a lot of people are buying more stuff over the internet so that they can get all the products delivered to their house with free delivery. So in a rural area, that's a big advantage. You don't have to drive to, say, a business center like Alexandria or Wilmer or Moorhead or something like that to get your product that's delivered right to your door. So that's one thing besides the other educational products that are things you need. That's a major part of it too. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, thank you so much. As I mentioned, next week is Day in the Hill for broadband, and there's a good rural coalition that has built a whole stable full of support material, including the county broadband profiles done by Ann Tracy and some additional material created by Blandin Foundation and Becky LaPlante has done things. That there's all kinds of information out there to support the argument that broadband is an essential utility. And so I encourage you to use that material. The Minnesota Broadband Coalition site has all that information, and I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Next month, our webinar, we will have one. It's always the second Thursday of the month at 3 o'clock, and we'll be coming up with some topic areas. But if you have suggestions, please email back to Mary Magnuson. We'll collate those and we'll put those together. Our brainstorming, I think, is maybe getting a little stale. I think today was a great session, so I want to thank our speakers. But helping you with your broadband challenges is our #1 priority. So if you can tell us what those are and where you could use some additional information, that would be great. Mary?
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you to Vince, Donna, Mark, Rick, and Whitney for joining us on the webinar today. As Bill said, our next webinar is going to be April 13th from 3 to 4 p.m., and the topic has yet to be determined. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, and have a great rest of your day.